Hours before legendary director Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead, multiple reports say that Rob Reiner got into a quote unquote big fight with his son Nick at, of all places, Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, with one witness telling People magazine, and I quote here, Nick was freaking everyone out. And we all know what happened next.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And let's just get right into it. This is one of the most mind-blowing stories of 2025, without a doubt, just because of the celebrity nature of it, the unexpected nature of it, the magnitude of it, and the surprise. Here is what we know. Sunday afternoon today, for those who are maybe watching on a delay, it is Monday, December 15th. But on Sunday afternoon, December 14th, first responders are called to a home in Brentwood. If you don't know Brentwood in Los Angeles, which is where the COE is from, not from Brentwood, but Brentwood is akin to Beverly Hills, one of the nicest neighborhoods in the entire city. Well, LAPD's robbery homicide division was investigating, according to reports at that time on Sunday, as what was described as an apparent homicide involving two adults matching Rob Reiner's age and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner's age. Rob Reiner, 78, Michelle Singer Reiner, 68. And then, sure enough, it turned out to be Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner. Now, Nick Reiner, the son of Rob and Michelle, he has been arrested, taken into custody. The accusation is that he is responsible for this double homicide, originally on a $4 million bond. And from what I understand, that bond has now been taken away. He is being held without bail. And without further ado, our best guest, and you've got an amazing panel tonight for a very disturbing show. Before I introduce him, let me just say I was talking to Phil, and I'm about to introduce him. The world is feels like it's barely hanging on to its access right now, like it's about to fall off. Between what happened at Brown University, what happened down under in Sydney, then this news. I know it's cold, it's dark in a lot of places, including, believe it or not, in Miami. Let's just try to be kind to each other. We can do this. STS Nation can do this. It just seems like the world is unhinged right now. We're dealing with all sorts of different issues, from hatred, I think, to mental illness, to just people really just kind of losing it. It's the holidays. Just take an extra second this holiday season. And it's believe me, it's tough for me to do. Maybe take an extra second this holiday to just thank someone you wouldn't normally thank. And I'm not trying to be on a soapbox. I'm not that guy. We were flying back yesterday, and the COE and I were about to sit down in the terminal, and some crazy woman was like, "That's my seat," from a mile away. And I told the COE I was going to become one of those viral videos at the airport. But you know what? Just take an extra breath. I took an extra breath yesterday, and then I realized it would have been ridiculous to fight with some woman at the airport about absolutely nothing. My message: take a breath, be kind. All right, without further ado, Detective Phil Ramos, the guy's a legend, 3-time Officer of the Year, Las Vegas Police Department, went undercover, infiltrated the Cuban mob. If that's not enough, then he was a homicide detective. If that's not enough, the guy was shot at. If that's not enough, he's not, in his 20s anymore. He still rides around on a Harley. The guy is basically the man that most men want to be but never become, including myself. Next up, Nina Hobson, UK homicide detective. She's the female version of Phil Ramos. Nina, do you ride a motorcycle?
No, but I want to now.
Yeah, there you go.
I ride a horse, Phil. I ride a horse.
Oh, horse.
Oh, I love horses.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Motorcycles have a lot of horsepower, maybe, I guess, I think. Okay. Um, and then last but certainly not least, Rachel Fizet, criminal defense attorney out of the great city of Los Angeles, where all of this is going down. I've got some recent police sound, but let's dig into this now. So, Phil Ramos, I'm going to start with you. Again, this all started to play out yesterday afternoon. There's a 911 call apparently made from Rob Reiner's daughter, Romy Reiner. And she calls and says, it appears she's an absolute shock. I've seen her, friends of hers have been speaking to the media. Obviously, as anyone would be, she is just, she can't process what is going on, I don't think. But she calls 911, calls police, says she believes both of her parents are dead with their necks slashed. And she says that she thinks that her brother could be responsible. Phil Ramos, I mean, what do you do at that point? At that point, they didn't know where this guy was, and they didn't track him down till the evening hours.
Yeah, well, once you get there and stabilize the scene and make sure there's no other victims around there, you want to get a good, thorough base of information from the daughter. Why her first utterance was, I think my brother had something to do with this. That's not the typical thing that you hear, and you wonder, well, okay, what's this all about? Tell us why you say that. Because right there, you're pointed in the direction. Whatever evidence you have at the scene is still gonna be there. But when you're directed at a specific person and then someone that's intimately close with the victims, ma'am, please tell us more so that we can get to the bottom of this. And that's where you start. Granted, she's going to be in likely a state of shock, and it's going to be difficult to get the best information you can. You hope that she's able to maintain her composure long enough to give you good, credible information so that you can start beating the bushes and find out what happened, why it happened, and where's the bad guy that did this.
Okay, so let me just ask you a couple quick follow-ups. So you bring her in right away. If you're homicide, you get there. Are you telling an officer who's arriving on scene? Do you say you need to bring her down to the station because I've got to talk to her right away?
Well, you try to find out where she's more comfortable with. Does she want to stay there at the scene where her parents' bodies are? Does she want to get away from there? What's going to make her more open to being able to speak to you? So you go with that. You don't necessarily say, hey, you got to come downtown with us. No, that's not the protocol that you follow. You follow what's in the best interest of your best witness at that particular point. Once you establish that, you tell her, look, this is extremely important. We need to know, what you saw. And again, you said that you think your brother's involved. Why do you think that?
Yeah, but by the way, again, I'm not getting on a high horse tonight. I guess I'm in a bit of a mood. If I see any political comments in this chat, I'm throwing you guys out. No offense, as my mother would say. I just can't take it. It doesn't matter what your politics is. This could happen to anybody. There's family dysfunction across the political spectrum. I have friends of mine who are in the media, who have people I know who've been tweeting the dumbest what out today, implying that this is because of political upbringing, and it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So if I see political stuff in the chat, you're getting booted. Zero tolerance policy today, but I love you. So even if I boot you today, I'll probably have you back tomorrow. One final question, Phil Ramos. You're from Vegas. This is about as high profile as you can get. This is Rob Reiner, son of Carl Reiner. These are literally, his father, one of the biggest comedic legends of all time. The father, famous director and actor, meathead from, All in the Family. What do you do with that aspect of it where that the whole world is looking at this? They all want questions. How do you tamp down from an investigative standpoint and from an LAPD robbery homicide standpoint? You thought David was a big story, which we've been covering, which it is, but now you magnify that times a million with literally, he's at a Conan O'Brien party. Everyone connected here in terms of friends, are going to be celebrities. How do you deal with that aspect of it, Phil?
Well, you first start off with your best trained investigators, and LAPD has the robbery homicide specials squad, they call them, specials unit, and they respond strictly to very high profile cases like this. They responded to OJ, they responded to the Menendez brothers. So the specials unit in LAPD, robbery homicide, are your most experienced investigators, because once you get something this big, you like I always say, you only get one swing of the bat, and you cannot miss a comma or not dot an I when you're doing this, because you could likely lose a case if you don't have your best and most experienced investigators on this case. So that's where you start off with.
Okay. Nina Hobson, to you, we'll go around the horn and then switch it up a little bit. Now, a witness, again, spoke to People Magazine exclusively. I don't like when there's unnamed sources, but, people, they get information. So, and there's a very good true crime reporter there. But someone there says that everyone at this Conan O'Brien party was freaking out at the behavior, apparently, of Nick Reiner the day prior, just a few, it was late Saturday night, and then this happened Sunday afternoon. How important, to Phil's point, is it to now go back and speak to people at this party? And again, keep in mind, it's Conan O'Brien's party, so I don't think these are just like, your average Joes. These are the quote-unquote Hollywood elite, the biggest celebrities, but you have to go and you have to eventually talk to these people.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to talk to everybody, because we're going backwards again, because we've arrived at a scene and we've got 2 dead people and a very distressed member of the family. And at that point, we don't even know if the daughter is involved in this, and so we don't know who's involved in it. So anyone at all that can give any indication to what happened or why it happened, because right now nobody knows why. We're making assumptions, as we always do when there's a crime of this nature. But until we have evidence to support everything that we think or that the media are reporting, we've got to talk to everybody. Maybe somebody did overhear a conversation that could have been the trigger to this happening. So, Phil and I always talk about how we go backwards and we start with everything. And maybe we talk to 50 people and nobody gives us any information. And maybe we talk to 50 people and we get the one bit of information that can lead us into the next road of investigation. And that's our job as an investigator, and to be very open-minded of the information we're being told because of the celebrity nature. But I do want to just say that regardless of who it is and what their celebrity status is, the police will treat every investigation to the highest possible level. And I know that they have the unit that Phil's mentioned, because they are amazing. And they are also used to the other side of what's going to be happening with this investigation. And that is the media attention. And that is people making assumptions. And those guys and girls know how to deal with it and still do their investigation to the highest level. So I know that that's going to be happening right now.
Yeah. Rachel, to you, I was trying to find out. I'm sure Nick is, let me say it this way, he's likely lawyered up. I don't know. I have not confirmed that yet. You might know this, but police publicly said that he's been booked for murder, but the charges have not been filed yet. And we also are finding out that bond option, a bail option, was taken away from him. It was $4 million. What does all that mean from a legal perspective, to be booked for murder, but the charges have not been filed? How does it go in that order?
So they have arrested him. They have him under suspicion for murder. The charges need to catch up. So they're coming, and they have the judge has okayed this, and now they will either go in front of a grand jury and present the evidence so that they can be filed, or they will file a complaint and a preliminary hearing will ensue in several months or whenever whenever it happens, according to agreement or through statutory time period, which is quicker. So it's just that it takes a moment for them to actually file the charges. So that's where they are. But I think they have a lot if they've already, within this period of time, have him being held without bail. So I think they have a lot, and now it's just catching up through the court system so that he can be arraigned on these charges.
When you heard initially that he had this $4 million bail, I thought that for what he was accused of or arrested for, which was potentially a double homicide, that even that was surprising. That maybe there should never have been any. Were you surprised that he had this $4 million bail going?
I was. I think if he had the $4 million bail and then the bail was taken away and he's being held without any bail, which is where we are now. I think because this happened so quickly, they are finding new evidence as fast as they can. And that is, they're taking it to the judge and they're revoking the fact that the bail. So I think what they're showing at this point likely is that he is a danger to the community and he cannot be let go almost under any circumstances. So that's what I'm hearing when I hear that they are holding him without bail.
Yeah, and I heard coming over here, he is on a suicide watch, direct observation watch for an indefinite period of time. So they're watching him closely at the county jail. Phantom 6000, friend of mine, friend of the show. He lives in L.A. What's up, Joel? Very sad weekend. I know the neighborhood well. Rob Reiner's home. It's one block from, that would be, I believe, DA Nathan Hochman, who is a friend of Phantom's. Phantom knows pretty well. And it's also, I think, one block from Rockingham, which is where the O.J. Simpson, if you know that name, I heard it's a block from there as well. So a beautiful neighborhood, one of the nicest in L.A., also infamous and about to get more infamous with this crime. Now, Jim McDonnell is the LAPD police chief. He held a short little news conference. Let's listen to some of this. This was a short time ago, I believe. Let's listen together, and then we'll have the law enforcement officers here and the criminal defense attorney help dissect it down.
December 14th, about 3:40 in the afternoon, LAPD responded to a residence, the residence of Rob and Michelle Reiner, located in West Los Angeles Division. At that location, they found two deceased adults, a male and a female. Through the night, working with the coroner's office, they were able to identify them definitively as Rob and Michelle Reiner. We have our robbery homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder and is being held on $4 million bail. Pretty much that's what I can share at this point, but again, a very, very tragic incident.
And that $4 million bail, again, there is no bail now. They took that option away. Phil Ramos, just hearing that real quick, I mean, that's kind of standard police speak, but did anything stand out to you at all?
No, that was just a pretty generic who, what, when, where, why type of thing. And that was, to satisfy the clamor I'm sure that's going on right now. Can you confirm that it was the Reiners? And, you'll notice that he put in there that it wasn't the department that confirmed the identity of the victims. It was the medical examiner's office or the family. And that can be done by a family member looking at saying, hey, yeah, that's my uncle, that's my brother. But he's being very official and very by the book on it. And hence the open murder booking versus the first degree murder or something like that. They're still establishing the probable cause for their affidavit to get that, and Nina can speak more intelligently to that than I can, but that paperwork has to be pretty bulletproof to keep them in there. And once the judge reads that and confers with the DA and the investigators just how heinous is this crime, then you can see the result of that. Well, there's not going to be any bail in this particular case. surely they will ask for bail down the line. But as we're in the infancy stages of the investigation, it's bad enough to the point where, no, you're not getting out of jail for any reason right now.
Molly the G, I think is how you pronounce it. She said that she went to school with two of Rob Reiner's children. Very sorry that this is affecting you personally. Feel free to email me. I don't know if I would love to talk to you. survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. Letting us know that they paid for rehab for Nick 19 times. I had read 17, but 19 would not surprise me. And it's been going on here. You see, struggling since high school and middle school. So, Nina, let me ask you a question here. After this 911 call went out yesterday, there were all kinds of reports. The chief of detectives had like a very weird sort of mini news conference yesterday where he said, we don't have a suspect. We're not talking to anyone. He left it like very... And at that point, everyone had already suspected the son / brother to Romy and the other Reiner child. But it was a very just obtuse sort of description of what they were doing. I'm sure they were working the case, and he maybe purposely did that. But one of the things that we've learned is after the 911 call, Nick Reiner went MIA, and he wasn't taken into custody, I don't think, till about 9:30, 10 o'clock last night. What about that accounting for that missing time? A lot of things could have happened from 3:30. That's 6 hours from 3:30 to 9:30 at night. As a detective, what do you need to do to piece together that window of time?
So obviously he's in custody and they're speaking to him. And the reason that the chief detective did that was because right then we're at such early stages of an investigation, and we're not going to share anything that we don't have to. And you know my view with the media. I love the media dearly, but when it's an investigation, you know how I feel. Yeah. And at that point, he needed everyone to just back off for a moment while they did their thing. And that's all he needed to do. And good on him for not being under any pressure. There was a lot of people outside when he was doing that. And he stuck to what they needed to do, as they have done today. But in that time of finding him, they will now be going through with him every detail, every conversation that they have will maybe give them a piece of information. We don't know at this stage. Well, I don't know at this stage. Maybe it's been made public. Where's the weapon? Where did he go? Did he go tell anyone? Did he do it for reason? What was the motive? Did they really have an argument? Was he trying to get money, for an addiction? So those things now that we don't know, they will be finding out, and they will double check. I mean, there was a rumor, he went in with a known drug dealer. All of that stuff will come and go, as we know on this panel. But right now, they will piece together every single part of what he did when he left that property.
Rachel, to you, if you pull back the curtain, a lot of people probably don't understand this, including myself. But if you're Nick Reiner and he calls you, he gets a referral and says, "Let me call Rachel." What do you do? What especially with the nature of this case, with the high profile nature where TMZ is camped out, sort of typical LA, no offense to Rachel. I saw some video of quote unquote influencers camped out with their cell phones, and one of them is wearing a literal Burger King crown, the kind that kids get, but he's a grown man, and he's arguing with the police, and it's already a circus out there, and he's telling police he wants to file charges. This is going on right in front of the couple's home already. It's just going to get worse. The point is, OJ was a circus. This looks like it's going to turn into a circus very quickly. What do you tell your client?
I think you are focused on both his mental health at this point. I am not surprised by Suicide Watch at all. I wouldn't be particularly surprised if he has made a confession. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes here. But at this point, you would be focused on not the media, nothing other than your client, his well-being, him seeking legal advice and only speaking through a lawyer at this point. As a lawyer, I'd be all over the DA as soon as possible to get the discovery that the DA has, and making sure that he is in a safe place, in a safe cell, given the nature of this. So you're really just kind of in triage mode at this point. And you want to make sure that basically the defendant here is living in a bubble. So no speaking to the media, keeping your mouth shut, no speaking to anyone else in prison. You're trying to basically lock down and control as much as you possibly can as an attorney in this circumstance.
And are you making sure that the guys like Phil and Nina, the women and men like Phil and Nina, that the homicide detectives are not trying to ask him questions? You're keeping them at bay.
Oh, right. So you're telling him not to speak to them. And once he's represented, they have to work with the lawyer. So all of that is going down. First thing, number one thing, that's the first thing that happens.
Yeah. And so, Phil, how handcuffed are you once he hires an attorney from your perspective? How hamstrung are you? Can you ask anything? Do you have to go through Rachel if you have a question, it could be the most basic question. I don't know. I can't think of one right now because I don't know why. But if you have the most basic of questions, do you have to say, Ms. Vizet, could you ask your client this question for me? Or are you willing to do that for me?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as that utterance comes out, I want an attorney, or do you think I should have an attorney, or give me an attorney, then everything just shuts down. Everything shuts down just like Rachel said. You can't ask him what school he went to, because that could come back to bite you later. So if there's anything pertinent that you need an answer to, then you go through the attorney and say, hey, we'd really like to get an answer to this. And do you think you could speak to your client and see if they would provide an answer? The 99% of the time, they're going to say, no, sorry, I can't. But that's the game that we have to play. We have to do absolutely everything by the book. You can't try and run sideways instead of running straight. You can't do any of that because let's face it, this is going to be a career case. Two beautiful people's lives have been taken. Now you got to worry about, is your case going to be bulletproof when it comes before a jury and when the DA reviews it? So yeah, you absolutely have to play by the book. There's no two ways around it. No question at all about that.
Yeah. And Nina, what about this? I mean, it sounds like it's already a closed case. I know investigator, she is shaking her head and rolling her eyes. That's why I asked you. So your response to that?
There's no such thing as a closed case. We don't know what's happened. We don't know who's been responsible. And let's be honest, we've all seen cases that we think are closed cases and they've walked free. We're not going to mention any names other than The Reckoning, is it? I can't remember. Anyway, there isn't such a thing. And I want to just stress at this point, and Rachel said, she's looking after her client as she should. It's her job. So we understand that. We understand that as professionals, that we all have jobs to do. We don't, hate the attorneys. It gets frustrating for us because we're chomping at the bit and we want to prove this case, but we do work very professionally. And we also are very mindful of the well-being of the person that's in front of us. This is a person, regardless what anyone's thoughts are, who is being accused, and I won't go down the police road of what our thoughts are, but is being accused of killing his parents. That's not somebody that's a normal state of mind. So we as detectives and as police officers also have a duty of care about a client. And we work around rules about when we can talk, what rest they're allowed, what breaks they're allowed, how it works with their lawyer. And we're very, very professional and mindful of all of that. And we don't really hate lawyers. We actually understand each other, I hope, Rachel, right? but yeah, we're all looking after this person right now.
Yeah,
All
and you know, the COE builds the shows up. Would you mind updating wife to her name? She was much more than just his wife. We will be happy to do that, and I think you're right about that. Everyone here is an individual with a backstory, and she has a very interesting story as well. Sh Not to bring politics into it, I just thought this was interesting. Trump's famous book, The Art of the Deal, I read she took the cover shot. She was a photographer, so she happened to take the cover shot for that very book. But you know, that's the way the media is here, and sadly, I guess we fell into that trap too. But you know, Rob Reiner is the big name, the big headline, and his name is the one that's going to attract all attention, and then everyone else is going to kind of fall, you know, behind him. But good point, well taken. Thank you for that. Phil, back to you about this again. Burger King man is arguing with police, wanting to file charges against some other knucklehead, as the COE's dad would say. If you're the lead investigator on this case, do you say anything to your patrol officers? Do you say, just keep it quiet out here, do what you can? I know it's, you know, it's a public street, but just make sure it stays under control.
Yeah, that's one of the things that everybody has to deal with in law enforcement. You know, personally, I'd go out there and tell them, go home. Mommy has your soup and sandwich ready in the basement. But, you know, you got to maintain your composure and tell your officers that are out there in front, just, you know, don't lose your cool. So we deal with that on a regular daily basis. So you're certainly not going to tolerate one of your own guys jeopardizing your investigation or doing or saying something that they shouldn't, that's going to come back to haunt the case. So you just want to make sure that everybody maintains a professional demeanor at all times.
Yeah. Now, Phil, and I'm going to have Nina weigh in on this as well. So the call comes in again at 3:30 in the afternoon yesterday. Now it's been going and heating up and the whole deal. What is going on with the crime scene? What's going on, you know, with the home? How long does it stay cordoned off? What are you doing as homicide investigators? I assume at some point you went back to headquarters. Are you back out there today? What are you doing, sort of tangibly speaking, with the crime scene as you're trying to put this all together?
Well, it depends on how many people have access to that crime scene, and you know, are there any other people that are living in the house? Or you absolutely lock it down for several hours while you're gathering and processing your evidence, and while you're talking to people who have potential information of what the inside looked like before this would have happened, so that you can look and see, well, this nightstand wasn't over here or anything like that. There was mention made about the murder weapon hasn't been discovered, and we don't know what the murder weapon was, but there was also mention made that the two victims had suffered slashes to the throat. And I think, you know, Nina can tell you as well as I can, that's a very personal method of attack, and you learn to distinguish, you know, your wound characteristics from looking at a wound, and a slashed throat is very in-depth and personal. So you hang on to that crime scene for absolutely as long as you can, because once you let it go, anything that comes forward from that is contaminated. You can't say how or why you got this particular piece of evidence once you let the crime scene go. So you hang on to it, if you have to, for several days, and I imagine they're going to be there for a couple of days at least.
Nina, are you surprised that he was able to kill both parents, that he was able to do this apparently with some sort of knife, but that he was able to you know, we obviously all know about the Idaho 4, but I guess how common or uncommon is it for one person to be able to essentially using a knife, kill two people? Is that a difficult thing to do?
I mean, it is a personal attack, but at this point, we don't know. I can imagine it could be a frenzied attack, you know, with one of the parents, and I want to use that word because they're parents, and not only for this son, But, we don't know at this point what the defense wounds were. We don't know who tried to prevent what. But I can only imagine that it was a frenzied attack. And I also want to reiterate what we're talking about, the investigation, but walking into that scene, if it's a frenzied knife attack, parent, is not pleasant for the people who are going in there. It's traumatic for the police. It's traumatic, obviously, for any family members. But to do what he's done, or sorry, accused at this point of doing, is a very difficult thing to do, but could have been quite nasty and aggressive in the sense of no one was going to stop him. A slit throat is it's to do that to two people, to slit two throats is a very difficult thing to do. And I apologize, everyone, because I have just had the weekend and I'm with everybody in the world, but I have an Australian passport also. And yesterday was just one thing after another. And I just want to really support all of the emergency services around the world, because it's tough doing our job.
Yeah, and I know I'm sure there's probably more, but I saw at least one Australian police officer who's a hero, who was involved in the shootout, who's fighting for his life right now. Young, very strong, capable-looking guy who's clinging on for dear life right now down under. So it's been a tragic weekend. There's no denying that. And there's a weird feel in the air out there right now. But Icicle Aksu, who is now Icicle Music. Rachel, to you, at what point does protecting victims' dignity conflict with the public's right to know? And who draws that line? I mean, this is more of a esoteric question, but any thoughts on this as an attorney?
Yeah, I mean, it's the victim's dignity is a good question. This comes up a lot in sexual assault cases and in minor cases where you protect the people's names. You don't know who they are. They refer to them as Jane Doe, that kind of thing. So protecting victims is an important aspect to the law. In this case, we know the victims, and it's hard. That's a little bit different here. I think what happens in these high profile cases, and there's a series of hearings going on as it relates to the Charlie Kirk alleged shooter right now, that's actually this exact issue, which is, what do the media have the right to know, because the public has a right to know, and how do you still get a fair trial? That becomes the issue in a lot of these cases, is if the public knows and form a bias and they form opinions, does that start tainting your jury pool? When you have a large swath of people in a courtroom and everything's reported on, can someone get a fair trial based on what's going on outside? So that is a very real question. And it's generally a judge who decides when these issues are raised. I think right now, what's going on, as the public is very curious in a lot of details, but has less information, I assure you, than the detectives do, is they're protecting their investigation. So first and foremost, when you are dealing with a serious crime, what is happening is the detectives, the police department, the investigators, the DA, they are protecting the sanctity of their investigation. So that is a limiting force on what the public knows. And once there are charges and trials, et cetera, you're measuring a fair trial. Again, if the investigation's ongoing, with the protection of that investigation and what the public has a right to know. So there's a lot of factors that need to be weighed in something this high profile, where the public is really, really interested and wants to know the information, and all of the information isn't done being investigated.
Well put there. Also, I am not a soap opera watcher, but the same day that Rob Reiner died, Anthony Geary died, who's, I guess, longtime General Hospital actor. And then I heard on radio today that both he and Rob Reiner, exactly the same age, appeared in some productions together, and they were friends, both passing on the same day. So that is pretty eerie as well. Phil, I don't want to harp on this too much, but I'm curious. Just going back to the crime scene, especially with what has been reported so far about the slitting of their throats here, which is pretty obviously personal and also graphic. When you as a lead homicide investigator get to that house, walk us through what you're doing. I mean, what are you what are you looking at? What are you looking for? And then when you get to the bodies, what are you looking at there?
Well, your ground zero is going to be where the bodies are, and you start expanding your search for evidence away from the body. You focus on the bodies, the condition, the location, the position of the bodies, and document everything that you can. And from there, you start spreading out into different areas of, let's say they were in a bedroom. You start expanding your search and documentation of evidence to the four walls of the bedroom. And then you just keep going and going and going until it's apparent you don't have anything else to go for. But in this particular case, I mean, we don't know the area where I'm presuming that there was a fight, and you had a very good question. How could two people's throats have been cut by one bad guy? That was a question I had. Somebody had to watch their loved one get their throat cut. Hard to say, but you expand as the further away you get from where your bodies are, and from there you keep gathering evidence, even that stuff that you don't think is going to be evidence. If there's a blood droplet on a vase clear across the room, you're impounding that, or you're taking a swab of it. Everything that you think is going to be have any kind of evidentiary value, you document. And if you impound it, or if you just want to document where it's at, that's what you do. So you continue your crime scene investigation until you're virtually out of stuff to look at or examine.
True Lifestyles, Susan H., friend of ours, friend of the show, helps us behind the scenes. Apparently Nick was living at home. Sister Romy, I guess, came home and finds her parents like that. And the brother at that point, this guy, is gone for at least like a 6-hour window. Nina, to you, now different media outlets are reporting that this argument the night before at Conan O'Brien's holiday party, it was loud enough for many to have actually heard the argument. And apparently Rob and his wife, Michelle, were so upset post-argument that they actually just bolted. They left the party. Also, it was from what I was reading, it was a somewhat formal event, and Nick Reiner showed up in a hoodie, and his behavior was just characterized as odd, including going up to people and asking them, and this is obviously a party filled with celebrities, if they were quote unquote famous. He was going up. I mean, I read that as a person, who's the son of a famous person, who's just basically, and I could be totally off here, but maybe is antagonistic, making fun of famous people. I don't know. That's how I read it initially. But family, friends, noticed apparently at this party, and the quote to hear is that he was acting strangely. So again, when you're building sort of a timeline here, where do you go back to when you're looking at this case? Do you have to go back to his teen years when he was getting in trouble and doing drugs, and then these 17 or 19 different rehab stays? Like, you have to go and look at all of that history now?
Yeah, everything is going to be looked at as a suspect. But to start with, obviously, urgency. The guy is missing that we believe potentially has killed his parents. So we've got to find him. That's our priority. Once we've done that, to make sure that no one else is at risk, then we go back to where did this start? What may have triggered it? Go back to that party, because right now that's obviously a key place. That was where everyone saw them. They saw them together. And when you mentioned, Joel, about you thought, oh, he was maybe going to celebrities. When I saw that, I'm like, this guy potentially is under the influence, and his behavior, it's not a secret, and it's not been a secret for a very long time about his addiction. He's been around celebrity all his life, and it felt to me like he's under some kind of influence, and it was an embarrassment. And his parents, who have tried every single day by the sounds of it to help him, were like trying to do the same again. There may be an argument, there may have been raised voices because they're like, hey, you know, can we stop that kind of behavior right now? And then they left because they may have felt that was the way to stop his behavior. Sadly, we're never going to know, but we've gone back to that point to start with. Eventually, we'll go way further back and we'll see who his associates are. And back to Phil looking at the scene. We don't know at this point whether he did do this. We don't know if anyone else was injured. We don't know who anyone else's blood is there. So every single thing that we can recover and secure will be taken until we do know that it was him. But they did the right thing. They found him and made sure everyone else was safe. And then they go back.
Yeah, listen, I think this is particularly difficult for so many people to deal with because you're under the illusion that celebrities live these perfect lives. At least, you know, that's like the umbrella idea that they have these glamorous lives, and you quickly find out that they don't. But also I think a lot of families can relate to the dysfunction that exists in families. And now it's been put out there for the world to see because no one knew. You know, no one on the outside, I'm sure friends knew, but no one on the outside knew this was going on. And then just the extreme nature, the result here, which is a double homicide of certainly one very famous person. And the accused here, his father is that famous person, and his grandfather is arguably even more famous, Carl Reiner, who's best friends with Mel Brooks, who's still alive. So it's got these reverberations and is making it an extremely big case for the public. But Rachel, to you, one of the things I was listening to, I was actually tuning into some Los Angeles radio while I was taking my kid to soccer practice, and they had a legal analyst who said that they would be very surprised if this ever made it to court. They think that there's going to be some sort of plea deal here. What is your gut instinct? I know it's early to probably conjecture or surmise about that, but do you think this ends up in some sort of plea?
I do. That's also my gut, especially given that he is on suicide watch right now. That's very telling to me on how he might withstand through a trial and that he might not be able to. So I think that depending on the evidence, but the evidence appears strong as he's being held without bail. You know, that's my gut here, is there is something that absolutely is tying him there, that's convincing to a judge that he is a danger to the community. And if it's not open and shut, as we've all heard, but if there's not a strong defense that his team feels he can put forward, this is nothing short of a brutal trial on his son. It's hard to believe that in any circumstance where there are allegations of a child killing their parents, that there is not some sort of remorse if there is, you know, if the evidence does tend to prove that. And I think that it's unlikely that he would want to endure that trial. Yeah.
Nina, just going back the other way, and I've got a little video I'm going to play for you. When you hear, and you kind of alluded to this in your last answer, but when you hear about this sort of erratic behavior at this Conan O'Brien party, but apparently it's not violent, but it is very erratic, does that suggest that, some emotional escalation is beginning to brew? Does it sound like some sort of mental health crisis? Does it sound like a drug, a substance abuse problem? Does it sound like a combination of both? Do we just not know? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know what it is or whether it's mental health. I don't know enough about him. I just know that substance abuse was common. Dad and son's relationship had been publicly difficult at times. And there was an interview that I watched this morning where they talk about that. I can't remember which movie it was, but they worked together and how that had helped them build their personal relationship. Who knows what's happening? Who knows whether it was, an argument? We don't know the motive. We don't know if there was things prior to yesterday. But the suicide watch thing, I just want to say that most times we put somebody on suicide watch, or we certainly did if they've committed or been accused of a murder. And that doesn't mean that everybody is able to then use that as they're on suicide watch, so there's something wrong. It tends to be the way that we do things. Again, going back to that, protecting the person who's accused as well. They're accused at this moment in time. But until we know, I don't want to say it was drug related, it was mental health. All I can say is it's not normal behavior of the normal people that are sat here. And normal's a really weird word now. What's normal anymore?
I have no idea. Back to Phil here, and Icicle is back here from Turkey. How do investigators, Phil? This is a good question. Look, we're all immediately right now, all of us are assuming that this guy is guilty, that he did this, right? That is what the press is running with. He hasn't even had 48 hours yet. But how do investigators rule out a possible third party who may have acted knowing the son would automatically be blamed? Someone who saw them arguing. Interesting question.
Yeah, that is a good question. And I would go back to the utterance by the sister that said, I think my brother did this. So that would come into play once she says, well, this is why I think he did it. So one of the reasons that you go into such detail that caused her to say that would be, was he hanging out with his dope man? Was he in debt to the drug dealers that he was involved with? This is all assumption. We don't know that that's the case, but we're looking at a history of drug abuse, considerable history of drug abuse that would cause someone to come. I mean, there's different various types of homicide, but this particular patricide is one of the most difficult, emotionally draining cases that we see as investigators. I mean, what in the world drove someone to kill their parents? That's, you can understand some murders, dope deal ripoffs and stuff like that. But a homicide of this nature is really, really hard difficult to try and establish what happened and why did it happen. And then you got to look at the evidence. How do we know that there wasn't somebody else involved? Well, the cops will know that within a few hours of the investigation. That's something that you hold close. You don't release that information. Nobody really needs to know whether you think there was another person involved or not until you can say definitively, no, this was the only person involved. A lot of that will have to do with how intense these attacks were and the evidence that is there at the scene. Was there evidence of another person, a second attacker? A good investigation will bring that out.
And Phil, I think I know the answer. There was a question I meant to bring up earlier, and it was essentially, I'm paraphrasing, do detectives like you and Nina, do you ever become desensitized to this stuff?
Well, the quick answer is yes. The in-depth answer is every one of these affect us, and I think I can speak for Nina and any other detective who's ever investigated the murder of a child. Those stick with you forever. You never forget those. And I've had my fair share of murdered children, and I can recite just about everything about that case today, 20 years later. It's not so much that you become desensitized to it. You have a job to do. You've got to get it done, and you can't let your emotions get in the way while you're doing the job. If you need to decompress on your way home, that's when you do it. If you need to decompress before you go to sleep, that's what you do. These guys aren't going to get much sleep in the first 3 or 4 days anyway. So, yeah.
I imagine when you see two throats, if that is in fact what happened, when you see two throats slashed, that image does not go away too soon.
No, it doesn't. No, it
doesn't.
Ever.
It doesn't. I mean, as Phil said, we get our job done, and that's what I take pride in my job. But we also are human, and whether that's talking amongst ourselves, and we laugh sometimes at the comments that we make, and none of it's meant to be offensive, but maybe if it was heard out in public it would be. But that's a coping mechanism, and you never ever forget. And I unfortunately was involved in a case similar to this, where a son had murdered both his parents, and thankfully they're rare, but desensitized is people think that we don't have feelings if we use that term. We do, but we also really, really need to do our job at this point, because there's a whole heap of responsibility, and that's why we do our job really well as detectives.
Go ahead, Phil.
We have a saying, when he gets really ugly, you got to man up and do your job right now. You can cry later.
It is one of the toughest jobs out there. Phantom 6000 is back with a super chat. Thanks, Phantom. Dual diagnosis issues can start in preteen years. It's a long road. Addiction layers over the mental health issues. Hard to keep alive and safe. Yeah, it doesn't. That's a great point. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive. I'm going to bring on some psychologist types. This is obviously so early on, but those are great questions for them, and also to get some insight into what might have been happening. But again, I think one of the reasons this case is so upsetting to so many people is because everyone's family, I think if they're being honest, there are some issues. I mean, every family has issues. It depends on the degrees and who's got them, whether it's immediate family, but everyone can relate in the same way that probably pretty much everyone on planet Earth has someone, a relative, who has or is dealing with cancer in the same way. So I think that is why it is resonating the way it is. Now, I filled in some of these gaps, but just to give some information as we go here, that 911 call came in Sunday, 3:38 p.m., identifying the block where this happened, the 250 block of Chadbourne Avenue. That is where Burger King Man is now hanging out with the 1,000 other Looney Tunes who are, I don't know what they're doing. And apparently it was daughter Romy who was the one that discovered these two. That is something that will obviously stick with her, sadly, from now till eternity for her, and for many other people as well. He's booked for murder Sunday into Monday. That is according to Jim McDonnell, the LAPD chief. Taken into custody Sunday night, and you just heard Phil Ramos say it. Detectives worked throughout the night and are probably doing it again tonight to work the case, which is part of the job, and that's what they are. That's what they're doing now. Several media outlets did report that both couples, I mean, each person, Rob and his wife, that their throats were slit by a family member, presumed to be Nick, and that Nick was not at home, apparently, when police arrived. So they get there, but police are not at home. So, Rachel, we don't know what's going on exactly with Nick Reiner, and obviously you're always presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But in the state of California, is there some sort, if he's having a mental health breakdown, is there some sort of insanity defense that they could go with, or a plea regarding that?
There is an insanity defense, which is pretty difficult to show. They have to show that when he committed the crime, he did not know right from wrong. But if there's serious mental health issues, if there's schizophrenia or something along those lines, which I don't think I know one way or another, I'm just suggesting that it's possible there would be some sort of, or could be some sort of defense as it relates to insanity. My guess is there will be, his defense attorneys will seek something, if the evidence, shows he did it, if we're somewhere in that zone, they'll look to mitigate any kind of criminal actions as it relates to first degree murder, or they'll try to mitigate the crime down through his mental health state, or work to get him inside of a hospital instead of inside of a prison, things like that. So I think all of that will unravel, but all of it is ripe for exploration as we just look at the facts as we know them now. And that there could be some severe mental health issues, that kind of thing, which again, we don't know. We do know there's a history of addiction as it relates to him.
Yeah. Going back the other way now, and then I'm going to play a little video in a moment, but Good Morning America quotes Nick at one point during a segment, reflecting on how harsh sometimes his father, Rob, would be. And this is a 2016, we can't play it because of copyright issues on YouTube. But in a 2016 ABC Good Morning America recap, Rob describes Nick's writing origins in rehab because they had made a movie together, and he says that they both took from their experiences. And Rob says during that interview, and I quote here, "There were times we had fights." So that is going back at least to 2016. And then the LA Times, they highlighted a line from the film that they made together, and Rob Reiner was quoted, this is because of the drug addiction, but Rob Reiner was quoted as saying, "I'd rather you hate me and you be alive." My question to you, Nina, as an investigator, do you need to go back and watch this film here? It's obviously based on their life experience. Do you have to go back and get a sense of the history? Were there violent threats before? Were they ever acted on? How would Rob react? How did Nick react? How did Mother Michelle react? What about all these elements?
Yeah, as a good investigator, you're going to look at everything that you possibly can. But, we always fight, or whatever the term was that you just said, Joel. Well, I say that, I don't know. I always fight with my son. He's a pain in the ass. But it doesn't mean that I take a knife and slit his throat,
Right.
And I think sometimes we have to put it in the context that it was made. But as a good investigator, you want to know everything you can about your suspect. You want to see what the motive is. We don't know what the motive is, but, just one little thing may lead us to why this happened. Does it change the fact that somebody's murdered somebody else? No, it doesn't. But it does start to provide evidence and information for the defense lawyer to then pull apart. And so we look at everything that we possibly can. We're not going to watch movies. We spoke about it on the David case, all the words of the lyrics. Does that mean he killed somebody? Absolutely not. But does it start to give us some insight into what's happened and who the person is, whether that's the victim or the suspect? Then, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the movie, by the way, thanks to Emmy, the movie is called Being Charlie, and again, it's based on Nick's life. Nina, real quick, I mean, Nina does, and Phil has done this as well, protectee work. So my question is, how tough is it going to be? I mean, obviously you have the power of subpoena, but there's going to be a lot of famous people who investigators are going to want to talk to. And to coin your phrase, they can be a pain in the ass, Nina. So how do you get some of these people in there if they're like, oh, I'm a big celebrity, I don't need to go and speak to the police? How do you get them in to talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got your subpoena route, but let's be honest, if there's someone who's saying, I'm not going to talk to you when there's two people with their throat slit who are a daughter who's lost their parents, they're going to talk. And if they don't, then go for them legally. Because to me, that says so much about them too. No one's suspecting. We're just asking for help to prove your friend, this person. I didn't know him personally, but do I feel I did? Of course I do, because he's who he is. And Michelle is a person and a mom. And Romy has lost her parents and her brother. So, come on, if there's anyone who doesn't want to help because they think they're too big for this, then let's go legally for you.
Good on you, Nina. I would love to see Nina battle with some of these celebrities. Phil Ramos, and then I promise we'll play some of this video. Someone mentioned this in the chat, and it's a possibility. You have to look at the financial situation in this family. Clearly, famous Hollywood celebrity equals lots of money over many, many years. If there's a scenario, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm saying hypothetically, let's say he writes Nick out of the will. He's 78 years old, says, you're too troubled. I don't want to give you any of my money. This guy, Nick, snaps. So do you have to look at the financial situation in this family if something like that was going on as a potential motive? And by the way, someone asked to wish a happy birthday to their friend. That's sweet. Whose name is Yanela. Happy birthday, Yanela. Hope you're having a great birthday. And I hope Scott Lone Wolf got some points for that. But what about the money, Phil Ramos?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to take a really hard look at that. I was just reading some of the reports. Apparently, Nick was employed as a reporter for a TV station for a couple of years. So was that because he was told by his mom and dad, look, we're not going to give you any more money, and he needed to find a way to make money? I mean, you wouldn't expect the offspring of a very famous, I'm sure, multimillionaire couple to have to work for a living, which, there's arguments, well, they need to learn how to provide for themselves, because I'm not going to always be here. But that's certainly one of the things that you need to look at. That, given the fact that he's been to detox so many times, so many programs, obviously they didn't work. I think, and we can all agree, I think, Nina and Rachel are all on board on this, that mental health is going to be a key on this investigation, and that argument at the party. They're really going to drive that home. And hopefully, there's a certain truth to that. Celebrities are known for not wanting to get involved in cases like this. And hopefully they'll do the right thing and say, yeah, this is what I heard. This is what the fight was about. This is what I saw. We can't say that, 2 + 2 is 4 in that particular case, but it certainly gives you a place to start. And hopefully they'll do the right thing and cooperate with the cops.
Mama Styles, we're with you, even though it's not our birthdays. Maybe it's someone's birthday out there. It's been a sad birthday for me. Happy birthday to you. Happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate. The world is definitely, I said this off the top, a little bit off its axis, but it will get back on its axis. It always does. And look, well, I'm not an overly religious person, but the whole Jewish holiday of Hanukkah is about light prevailing over darkness, and it always does. It's been doing that since the beginning of time. Light will always prevail over darkness. I saw a video today of a Palestinian in Sydney going up to an Orthodox Jew, and the two of them were hugging, and that is the world that we actually live in. It is a silent, or not a silent, but a tiny majority of horrible people out there doing this. Someone just said he is now the third Menendez. That is the most famous other case I can think of in this part of the world, in the LA area, where someone took out their parents at the time. Jose Menendez obviously was a famous record producer, so there's some parallels there, but also a lot of differences. But this is an interview that Rob Reiner did. I thought it would just be nice to hear from him since he is now no longer with us, which is really hard to believe. This is Rob Reiner in his own words, and he's also, I think, showing the interviewer parts of his home, which has kind of a storied history in Los Angeles.
Thumb?
Well, I don't have a green thumb, but the person who first owned this house was Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda actually planted all of these roses.
And like the house, Reiner himself stems from Hollywood royalty. The son of actor, writer, director, producer Carl Reiner, Rob, now 63, grew to follow in his father's footsteps, becoming one of Hollywood's most successful and respected filmmakers.
You know, there's very few people whose parents achieved in this business at a very high level, whose children also achieve at a high level.
I'm going to hold it right there. Nina, that's a very interesting comment. He just said, and it's true, I think it's very rare that he's basically the son of an icon, and in a way, he became an icon too. And I'm just wondering if the pressure for the children was too much. The other son, I believe, is fairly successful in acting, but you got to think that there's enormous pressure on this guy, Nick Reiner. I mean, if you were able to talk to him, if he didn't lawyer up, would you want to know that? Would you want to ask him about that in a sweet, kind of way? Was this pressure too much for you?
Yeah, absolutely. You would talk about that, and you hear about sibling rivalry because somebody has achieved something, and that's huge pressure. Your dad, your granddad, and in your own mind, you've got an addiction problem, and maybe you're not holding down your job, and life is hard. And I know somebody made a comment about, no sympathy or whatever it was for a 32-year-old living at home. We don't need that. Because we don't know why. We don't know his ins and out of his lives. I think we all know that his parents have tried to help him every step of the way. But yeah, when we talk to him, we want to know everything from his perspective too. We're not going in there as an investigator and saying, you did this because we've been told that you did this, and we're in that frame of mind. We can't be. And the reason that we can't be is because we have to work with evidence, and we have to prove a case. And then we have to prove a case to a judge, and to a defense lawyer is going to pull our case apart. And we need to know everything ourselves to put that best case forward. So he has every opportunity to talk to us. And that's how we would go in. And, we'd initially go in and say, hey, open forum, tell us what you need us to know. And then we'll challenge him.
Sandy Baker says, sorry, but we're all responsible for our successes and failures. At our core, I agree with you, but, it can be very difficult. And I think it was probably extreme. I'm not making an excuse. Look, there's many, 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 many children of celebrities who don't go and do this, but I'm just saying the pressure can be enormous. I took it back a touch so we could hear that part again. A couple more questions, and then we'll get some final thoughts.
Father's footsteps, becoming one of Hollywood's most successful and respected filmmakers.
There's very few people whose parents achieved in this business at a very high level, whose children also achieve at a high level. It's rare. I mean, you can count it on one hand.
These days, it takes too many fingers to count Rob Reiner's triumphs, from acting in television's All in the Family to directing hits like When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, and Misery.
I make movies about people that live on Earth. Nobody gets exploded. Nobody is running around chasing anything. Basically, they're people in rooms talking. You're sticking with Dad on this.
Just tragic to know that he is no longer with us, and the way that he left us is really pretty incredible. Phil Ramos. This investigation, I think it's fair to say, is moving incredibly quickly. Overnight they booked this guy. Bail is stripped away, which means they've probably got some other things. Does this suggest in any way that there is a quote unquote mountain of direct evidence, a lot of circumstantial evidence? If you had to guess, what do you think's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think that there's some very strong direct physical evidence, and then of course the circumstantial evidence is going to come into play. But the very nature of the investigation moving as quick as you did lends to the fact that they've got a pretty solid case right from the get-go. And right now they're going to be doing a lot of the background. You know, like Nina said, you're going to go back, you keep going back and back and back, but you're going to start with this party and see when was the last time he was in rehab? Was he supposed to be going to rehab soon? Was it a financial issue? All that stuff is going to come into play. But for the probable cause to hold him and have him booked right now, there's going to be a considerable amount of direct physical evidence to establish your PC for the arrest.
Yeah, I think there's going to be. I think I understand this comment. I think there's going to be a lot of these. Someone kind of pushing back on me, which I don't mind at all. But right here from Sally, drug addicts will kill anyone for drugs. This is not uncommon. Pressure cut me a break. Rob's son was probably spoiled and entitled. Look, he had everything. I'm sure he went to the best private schools, but that, you know, that can crack an individual as well, because you want to live up to the expectations. So I think that sometimes people are only seeing things through the lens, their own lens, from where they come from. And I think that money, celebrity, they can all be blessings and curses as well. But it's hard, I think, for the public to see. And look, Nina knows some people in that world, and she could probably tell you firsthand that it is not always a blessing. I'm sure Phil has run into people, and Rachel lives in Los Angeles. So sometimes it can be an absolute curse, I think. To you, Rachel, now there's going to be an initial hearing. You know, there's going to have to be an initial hearing. How soon should we expect that? Is that the sort of thing that would be televised, not televised? LA has a tendency to clamp down on big media circuses, especially with most recently with the Menendez brothers. But then you had OJ that was streamed. But how soon for an initial hearing? What will happen there?
He'll be arraigned. So the initial hearing will be when they have the charges filed, and they're going to tell him the charges. And that's what I expect to be happening soon. And they're just catching up. They're catching up with the evidence to get the charges out. And I think they're probably deciding first-degree murder, premeditated or not. That would be my guess as to what the issue might be in determining where this goes, just given how quickly this investigation appears to be moving. And I think it's a good question as to whether there'll be cameras in the courtroom. My guess is the judge will need to try to control this media circus. And I think we're going to hear some sensitive information as it relates to his mental health, at least when they begin arguing bond again. So I'm going to say likely not a camera in the courtroom, but plenty of media around it. But that's just a guess. And this investigation will continue to go on for quite a bit of time, even after he's charged. So discovery will be coming out in various tranches, because even though they think they have probable cause and enough to charge at this moment, they're going to button up the entire investigation. The investigators and the prosecution team will button it all up, and that's going to take months. And
Rachel, this is a hypothetical. I don't know this to be fact, and it probably isn't. But let's say there was a confession. That's what this super chat is about. But let's say he was under the influence when he did this, and there's a confession from an attorney, from a legal perspective. Do you file a motion to suppress that, eliminate it? What do you do? I mean, that's not going to be admissible in court, I assume.
Well, as all of the evidence comes out, the attorneys then determine what they can get out of the courtroom. So if there is a written confession, how did the confession come about? How would they use it in court? That kind of thing. But I think once there's all the evidence is in front of the defense team, they start picking at what they can get rid of. And they'll be, and what they have a long shot on, but they'll shoot their shot on all of this. of course, unless they want to immediately get to some kind of plea phase and get rid of the media circus, that kind of thing. But again, I mean, we don't know if there are cameras in this house. Celebrities likely have some sort of high detection within their home. So we really don't know what kind of direct evidence we have at this point. And that is where then the defense team tries to tear it apart.
This is for sure. A confession does not negate mental illness. No, it doesn't. Phil, if you had a guess with your experience, do you think they got a confession out of him?
I think it's 50-50 on that. They may well have. I think if they would have gotten him in a closer time frame from when the crime was committed, then it would be more likely that he would have had a spontaneous utterance type of confession, or maybe he was just waiting for the cops to come knocking. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say because we don't know enough about where the investigation stands at this point to say whether there was a confession or not. But I say it's 50-50.
Nina, final question, and we'll get final thoughts. I don't know how to phrase this in a nice way. Let's put it. Nina lives there. LA is an interesting place. My family lives there. There's a lot of people who want to be famous, and there's a lot of people that are right away going to suddenly have known the Reiners, worked with Rob Reiner, worked with Nick, that come out of the woodwork. So how do you, as an investigator, assess the integrity of witness statements when people just start maybe coming to you? You're not even looking for them, and they tell you maybe because, it did happen, or maybe because they're looking for a role or something. So how do you know who to listen to and who not to listen to?
Again, as an investigator, you've got to listen to everyone, unfortunately. And let's face it, Mr. Burger Hat Man or whatever it was, you're not going to be famous. You're just going to be regarded as an absolute asshole. So go home. But the thing is that we have to listen to everyone because, again, that little bit of information may be crucial. But we're smart and we learn quite quickly how to judge what information we're getting to be real or not real. And we sometimes listen harder to some bits and not so hard to others. But we're good at our job. And we'll work it out.
By the way, we have a lot of new people in here tonight because it's a news story. And if you don't know us, now you do, as they say. But this is Surviving the Survivor. We do a nightly panel show Monday through Thursday with the best guests. It is not a tagline. It's our reality. You're seeing it right now. The best guests in all of true crime, 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. My mother is a child Holocaust survivor, a licensed therapist, and an all-around great and wild woman that likes to put me in my place, hence the title, Surviving the Survivor. A lot of people ask about that. And on Fridays, we do sort of a feel-good, fun show, despite the heavy subject matter, where she puts me in my place on Fridays, too. That's at 1 o'clock. If you appreciate the content, please hit like, please subscribe. We've got a Patreon page, and it's the holidays. I've got a book about my mom, life advice, and her Holocaust story, Surviving the Survivor, available anywhere books are sold. Same title as the podcast. Rachel Fizet is a criminal defense attorney from the City of Angels, Los Angeles, where all of this is unfolding. I imagine this has got to be really tough on the city. I think it's tough on the public. But I have the COE has friends. I have friends from living there who are in Brentwood. I know it's an absolute circus out there. From a client perspective, how often would you be in touch if you were representing Nick right now? Would you want to go to the jail every day to check on him? How often would you be in touch with him? And your final thoughts here?
It would really depend on his mental state. At this point, you want to be in touch quite a bit. As the ball is continuing to move, he's going to want information, and he's going to want that information from his attorney. So there would be, I wouldn't say every day, but probably 3 times this week seems likely. I think he may still be deciding on an attorney, so they have to have an initial meeting. It's unclear how he's being held in county jail. So I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts at this point, but he's got a lot of questions right now. And so there is a need for those questions likely to be answered by his attorney, who is really the only trusted communication he can have at this moment.
This comment is why I think this story resonates so much. The NAF Entertainment. My son participated in active addiction for well over 12 years, and I know exactly what the victims endured trying to save their son, but they can't be saved, meaning the drug-addicted people, unless they want to be. And again, I think that's one of the reasons this is hitting home. Sadly, drug addiction and the prevalence of drugs in this country is out of control on every level. And I think every family, not every family, but many, many families deal with it. And if they don't, they know families that are. So it's a tough story all around. Nina Hobson, she's sort of, in a way, the female Phil Ramos. I never put two and two together. She's a badass. She was a homicide detective. She does not ride a Harley, but she does other cool stuff that I won't disclose on national YouTube. But Nina, what are investigators doing at this very moment, and your final thoughts?
They're pulling together right now as a unit, and they are making sure that they're all okay, because this is one of the, if not the toughest case that many of them thankfully will ever be on. And at the same time, they're working long hours, and they are making sure that they cross those T's and dot those I's, as Phil said right at the start, because every case we do, we want it to be successful. And every case we do, we know that there's a possibility that we don't do something exactly right. So they're working their absolute backsides off right now in traumatic and stressful situations. So, sorry, I just thought there was someone at my window. But
that would be bad for the person at the window. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah, it would today for sure. But they're working, and you know, and hopefully they're going home to their kids and their parents, and that's what we do. Make sure that happens.
Yeah. Word of advice: don't break into Nina Hobson's home. It will not end well for you. And her son is a huge guy, by the way. So if he's there, definitely.
Yeah, and we only fight over the fact he's still not learned how to pick his clothes off the floor at 25. So that's how we fight.
I will make no comments about my wife at this point. I will choose to remain silent, because anything can and will be held against me. Phil Ramos, what can I say? 3-time Las Vegas Police Officer of the Year. That's not just any police department. He was present, did I tell you this, for Tupac Shakur's autopsy. Not a lot of people can say that. He carried $1 million through a casino, infiltrating the Cuban mob, homicide detective, all around great guy who I've never met in person. And I've never met Nina in person. I've never met Rachel in person, but one of these days I will. Phil, just pull back the curtain one last time. If you're the lead investigator on this case, are you at the scene right now? Or do you have your feet up on your desk talking to your partner? What are you doing? How are you doing it? And your final thoughts.
Well, you're at the scene until there's no more scene left for you to be at. And you're comparing notes with everybody that's there. You know, you pull your squad together and see what has to be done. And, you lean on the strength of your supervisors to give you every tool that you need to carry this through. You're not going to be putting your feet up on the desk for a couple of days yet. But one thing they are going to do, and Nina alluded to it, he's going to go home and hug your wife and kids, or your spouse and your kids, a little tighter when you have to come home from a scene like this.
Wise words, and that is true. That's how I started the show. It's weird out there. I know it is actually freezing cold in most of the country, around the world, except for down under. It's getting dark early. People are generally, there's a little malaise going on, I think. And then you've got these horrible stories adding to the mix. So do something that's fun. I don't know. Take a ride to McDonald's. Maybe get a milkshake. I would never do that. Maybe. And I don't know. Do something that brings you a little bit of joy. Do something nice for somebody else, even if it's little. Hold the door open. I was going to fight this woman at the airport yesterday, but I didn't. The COE grabbed me. Just be kind. Don't kill anyone. Love you, America. Love you, LA. Love you, LA. Love you, Las Vegas. And justice for Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, here, which I think will come. But for them, sadly, it is too late. And prayers go out to the Reiner family. It is an absolute tragedy, whether you're famous and have tons of money, whether you're not famous and have no money. This should not happen to anyone. And the pain is going to be immense. We will see you guys tomorrow. Sheriff Mickey Steins is back in court this week. We're going to bring that to you. And we had a verdict in the Brian Walsh case today. We have the verdict posted. Check it out. Love you all. See you tomorrow.